until I was a recording artist, I sang whatever paid the bills.
Having finally regained her sense of independence again, Eileen quickly assembled together a demo tape of her self-penned country music originals. But unlike others treading the country road, she didn't make any attempt to head for Nashville straight away. Away from the glare and glamour of the music city, her manager and longtime pal, Mary Bailey, arranged for Richard Frank, a Nashville lawyer, to come to a showcase in Canada. Eileen caught the attention of a few industry insiders with the concert. Frank got the ball rolling, setting up a meeting with the producer, Nora Wilson. She was then introduced to Buddy Cannon, who was in A&R at Mercury Nashville at the time, and he handed her tape over to the head of the record label. The tape and meetings eventually resulted in a major record deal. Within a few months, Mercury Nashville had signed her to their artist roster. Impressed by her compositional skills, the executives at Mercury Nashville had signed the young singer, who was then still known as Shania Twain. Stating that her first and last names didn't flow well together, they also urged her to change her surname to something more flashy. Considering such an alteration an insult to her adoptive father's memory, she instead opted to change her first name instead. During the years of performing at the Deerhurst Resort, the then Eileen had met a dresser in the show who was also half Ojibwe. Her name was Shania, a beautiful moniker Eileen could easily relate to. Having worked in radio, Eileen had come to have her name mispronounced on many occasions. DJs had called her Arlene, Irene, and Elaine. She thought Shania was not going to be that difficult to get wrong. Thus, our heroine began the decade by shedding her real name Eileen and adopting the Ojibwe Indian name of Shania, pronounced Shu-Naiu, meaning I'm on my way, and headed to Nashville to work on her first record. As Shania Twain, she released her debut self-titled album in April 1993. Although Shania, Eileen, was signed on the basis of her self-penned demo material, in a bittersweet twist of fate, her self-titled debut featured only one of her original songs, the feisty God Ain't Gonna Get You For That. It wasn't a major hit, but Shania's debut record performed respectably in the United States, eventually going gold on the back of 3 minor hit singles, What Made You Say That, Dance With the One That Brought You, and You Lay a Whole Lot of Love on Me. Still, Shania's strength also lay in her stunning, youthful visual presence. Her first hit single, the country-tinged What Made You Say That, may not have taken the country world by storm, but it did get the attention of Hollywood actor Sean Penn, who decided to direct one of her videos. It was now a given fact that Shania had the video talent to achieve a celebrity status within the realm of country music. Though the record didn't get many rave reviews and garnered little attention from US music industry critics, her videos were attracting a lot of attention overseas, where her debut album had managed to at least prick up a few ears, going so far as to earn her the accolade of Country Music Television Europe's Rising Video Star of the Year award. Shania knew that success lay just around the corner. With such high aspirations and sheer determination, Shania was fiercely independent and had the will to succeed. Once again, as had been the case with her life up to this point, the next step in Shania's musical career would once again be intertwined with her personal life.
I was pushed into this, we need you to co-write 3-hour writing sessions and this kind of thing, and I didn't understand any of it.
The wheel of fate was once again to play a hand in proceedings. This time, though, it would turn up trumps for country music's brightest new star. It was through her first recording that Shania would eventually meet her soon-to-be producer husband, Robert John Mutt Lange. When Lange was in England, he always had CMT Europe switched on while he was in the recording studio. He would be producing a track while watching CMT Europe in silence. Despite his credentials, the veteran rock producer was at heart a huge country music fan who loved the classic twang of a steel guitar. One day, Shania immediately caught his eye. After seeing her midriff bearing video for the song What Made You Say That, Lange was immediately determined to hear more from the woman behind the navel. He asked one of his friends to send him a copy of her debut album and worked out to her music every morning. Mutt was equally attracted to Shania for her inspirational voice, but even more so, he wanted to get to know her from a songwriting perspective. Lange, whose production credits had already included big-selling albums by rock giants such as AC/DC, Def Leppard, The Cars, Michael Bolton, Foreigner, and Bryan Adams, had wanted to move into country music for a while, and after hearing Shania Twain's self-titled debut album, he decided he would get in contact with her with the intention of working on a record. The distant admirer soon made contact with his female idol via Shania's manager, Mary Bailey, and before long, the duo were talking music over the phone. Shania played some of the songs she was working on for her next album over the telephone, and Mutt immediately agreed to become her producer. Shania had at last found a true believer in her work, both in her voice and her original songs. However, the country star had absolutely no idea that Lange was a world-famous record producer who had been responsible for some of the biggest-selling records of the 80s. Shania wasn't exactly a train-spotting music type who read the credits on the back of every pop and rock album, which, in the long run, was a good thing, because she wasn't intimidated by him when it came to expressing herself creatively without any inhibitions. Mutt and Shania soon became close friends over the telephone through writing songs and exchanging ideas. Creatively, they were very much in sync with one another. In fact, they ended up writing half of Shania's album before they had even become romantically involved. After a few weeks talking and writing material over the phone, they decided it was time to meet up and get to know each other a bit better. The first time they actually talked face-to-face was in Nashville during Mercury's Fanfare show in 1993. Little did she know it, but through her art she had now met the producer of her dreams and what would turn out to be the love of her life. After all those early years of strife and hardship, Shania's world was now about to change for the better, as Lange provided the catalyst to spark her creative fire. What more could she have wanted? They soon discovered that they were borderline soulmates. While working on her next album, The Woman in Me, released in 1995, the couple fell in love. On December 28, 1993, the pair sealed their futures together in a more fundamental way. They got married. Shania received a high-carat diamond to mark the ceremony. They now live in a 12,000 square foot studio home in upstate New York that sits on 1,200 hectares of land, but plan to move to Switzerland to avoid the spotlight that constantly shines on them both in North America. Though some instantly speculated that Shania saw in Lange her own personal Svengali, all the evidence suggested that the two were and still are head over heels in love. Creatively and romantically, it was a marriage made in heaven, as the pair started to make beautiful music together, both in and out of the recording studio. Of course, love didn't prevent the couple from soon rocketing Twain's career up into the stratosphere, since it was to be Lange who was responsible for exposing Shania's true talent for songwriting.
My mother's obsession for my music, I think, kept her going a lot of the time. And it was, I think, her saving grace during those times.
Unlike her debut, Shania's next long-playing recorded work was to be something of an international project in songwriting terms. As the following year unfolded, both Mutt and Shania travelled and co-wrote their way across the US, Canada, England, Spain, Italy, and the Caribbean. They began to lay down basic tracks for Shania's new album in Nashville, later recording overdubs and mixing in Quebec. As a songwriter, Shania's muse came from a very childlike perspective. To her, writing a song was like kids colouring without reason, without inhibition, totally open in creative terms to every paint, pastel and pigment. Several of the songs on The Woman in Me blended Shania's simple country sensibility with Mutt Lange's famous over-the-top bombastic rock production values. Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under and Home Ain't Where His Heart Is Anymore were songs Shania had kept undusted in the vaults for a couple of years before she had even met him. However, when she had sung them to Mutt over the phone, the producer instantly recognised their hit potential. Home Ain't Where His Heart Is Anymore was actually the first song they ended up recording together in Nashville, so it was only fitting that it was later the first song on the new album. Released in February 1995, Shania Twain's second album offering, The Woman in Me, was certain to do considerably better than its predecessor, especially with Lange's involvement. The record's debut single, the accusatory yet peppy number, Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under, entered the Billboard Country Singles Chart at number 33 in January 1995, while the song's parent album debuted on the country album charts the following month. The single rose to number 11 and The Woman in Me was certified RIAA Gold. But it was to be the record's next single, Any Man of Mine, which would truly kick off Shania's career, making her the star we have all come to know and love today. Making a deep impact across radio and TV land in the States, the song, which featured a video shot at friends John and Bo Derek's ranch in California, hit the charts in May and became the first of 4 consecutive number ones for Shania, every one of which would spend the requisite of 20 weeks in the charts, including If You're Not In It For Love, I'm Outta Here, You Win My Love, and No One Needs to Know, a song which was later hand-picked for inclusion on the soundtrack of the blockbusting tornado disaster movie Twister. In an almost storybook fashion, Shania Twain's second album had become a smash hit wonder. Alongside the album's title track, 2 more singles saw some serious chart action. The aforementioned Home Ain't Where His Heart Is Anymore, and the lullaby hymn God Bless the Child, with proceeds donated to the Kids Cafe, Second Harvest Food Bank in the US, and the Canadian Living Foundation, which provided meals for underprivileged children there. Altogether, Shania's run on the singles chart spanned well over 100 weeks, an amazing achievement for one album with no touring whatsoever. By the beginning of 1996, The Woman in Me has sold over 6 million copies and broken the record for the most weeks spent at number 1 on the country music charts. During the course of 1996, it would rack up another 3 million in sales. The record had finally made Shania a multi-platinum phenomenon. When it received its 11 million certification, Shania Twain had become one of only 4 women in the history of recorded music to accomplish such a feat. It also easily surpassed sales records of any previous album by a female country artist. Eventually, it went on to become the best-selling country album of all time. To date, it has sold more than 15 million copies worldwide. For her achievements around the release of The Woman in Me, Shania earned Billboard honors as 1996 number 1 top country album artist. Her 1996 Grammy Award for Best Country Album was echoed by the Academy of Country Music and her Native Canadian Country Music Awards, both Album of the Year. And she was variously named Favorite New Country Artist or Favorite Female Country Artist by the American Music Awards, Blockbuster Entertainment Awards, Canada's Juno Awards, World Music Awards, and so on. Her videos earned similar awards from CMT, Country Music Television US, and European outlets, ABC, radio networks, and others. One of the most telegenically accessible country figures on the planet, her promo video clips were later compiled on the Complete Woman in Me home video collection.
Going out on a Sunday to snare rabbits. This is just not a typical thing for any of my girlfriends, to do.
I have never lied about who I am and where I come from. I've always told the truth.
Nonetheless, despite its standing in music circles, The Woman in Me met with a predictable backlash. Many country diehards complained either about its cost, $500,000, truly exorbitant by Nashville standards, its lyrics, completely overly assertive for a woman by Nashville standards, or about the simple fact that Shania wasn't a product of Nashville, not acceptable by Nashville standards. Still, country music was the people's music, and it was to the people that Shania had set her case and won, but that still didn't stop the critics from having their say. While starting out, Shania had played up on her Native American heritage by sharing stories of trapping rabbits in early magazine interviews. Sadly, this later came back to haunt her when people started to brand her as a liar for saying that she was part Native American Indian. While her mother was of Irish descent and her blood father French-Canadian, the stepfather she had known and loved and the man who had raised her as a child was a native and had naturally instilled his culture into her. More hurtful by far, however, was an article published in the Star's hometown newspaper asserting that she had lied about her heritage. The piece accused her, erroneously as it turns out, of falsely claiming Indian ancestry in order to lend a mythical element to her background and music. Of course, lost in all the tabloid furore was the fact that Shania Twain had donated all the proceeds from 2 hit singles, Home Ain't Where His Heart Is Anymore and God Bless the Child, to organisations that provided food for underprivileged children. The latter, a song that holds a special place in Shania's heart, was originally written after her parents died, when she would go out into the woods to try and come to terms with the tragedy. And that wasn't the end of the story. Shania might now have been selling a lot of records, but like other mega-selling acts before her, she earned very few good reviews. Most critics accused her of diluting the purity of country music with rough, bland, anthemic hard rock techniques, and with shamelessly selling her records through the use of over-the-top sexy videos. Thankfully, Shania's fans ignored such complaints, mainly because her audience was comprised of many listeners that had grown accustomed to such marketing strategies by constant exposure to MTV. And Shania, in many ways, was the first country artist to fully exploit MTV's demanding style. She created a sexy video-orientated image that appealed not only to the country audience, but also to pop fans alike. In turn, she became a country music phenomenon, rewarded by some very heavy product sales and the appetizing glare of mass media attention. Shania was now attracting people not only inside Nashville, but people from the mainstream of popular music. Now, just about everybody in the music business had noticed that Shania was a force and talent to be reckoned with. Even her hometown had to eventually catch on to the fact that they had a mega star in the making. Before Shania Twain's 31st birthday, the town of Timmins held a homecoming for her fit for a queen. They presented her with the first ever key to the town and renamed the main street of Algonquin Boulevard to Shania Twain Way. She left her handprints in cement and also had a garden named in her honour. More recently, the townspeople opened a Shania Twain shrine dedicated to her life's work.